My impression is that what happened is that people slashed their budgets last year and they haven't really recovered very much since then. But I think there's some tentative signs. If you look at the newspapers, they're starting to get just a little bit fatter. And I think that some marketing is coming back. It's not consistent across the whole piece, but I see some signs that it is starting to pick up just a little bit. Of course, we're going to see over the next few years an absolute slashing of government spending on advertising. So that's going to distort a lot of the data. I think the business sector, it's probably trying to keep a tight ship at the moment, but I think things are probably off the bottom. They're going to be spending a little bit more than they were in the depths of last year. One of the big errors that you tend to find in a recession is that corporates tend to cut their marketing spend, even though actually you get a much better return from your marketing spend, particularly from your advertising during the recession. The best example is the Papa and Nicole adverts, which Renault had a few years ago. And they nearly doubled their market share for cars with those adverts, which really got going right at the beginning of the early 90s recession. They showed how much advertising works. If you have the guts to carry on with an advertising campaign in the middle of a recession, you'll find that you get really quite significant results, because there are fewer other messages on the airwaves to confuse with yours. And of course you get much better deals through the media in the recession. So that really is the time to advertise, and all the proof is that it works. I think brand Britain has been damaged, particularly by the previous government, which didn't do all that much with its attempts to tax non-doms and its almost attempt to wage war on the business sector with the way it attempted to regulate it and lambasted it in its speeches and so on. The present government is much more clearly pro-enterprise, but their actions have been relatively minor. A small reduction in corporation tax, but largely offset by reductions in tax relief. So net, there's not much gain to the corporate sector from that. And the high rates of tax that came in under Labour have been kept. So I think that mix is still making brand Britain look a tough act in a world where you've got Asian economies that have 10% tax rates trying to set themselves up as competitors. Now, at the moment, we're sufficiently sophisticated that we can overcome that competition, but that won't be the case forever. And I think we should not get complacent about trying to assume that the world owes us a living and we can continue to have high rates of taxation and relatively heavy regulation by at least Eastern standards, while still expecting to do business successfully. People will look elsewhere if they see the business climate in the UK as unattractive. If you believe in an enterprise-led recovery, then almost by definition you're not expecting it to be led by government. And so what government can do to make it happen is relatively limited. However, over the past few years, governments have done quite a lot to obstruct enterprise. They've obstructed enterprise through regulation, through high taxation. I mean, 50% tax rate greatly reduces the incentive for a lot of people, and also encourages people to look and see if they can do their enterprise elsewhere, which are sort of knock-on effects in other economies than the UK. Most of these big things have not yet been dealt with, and so if enterprise is to lead a recovery, it's going to have to do so off its own bat mainly. We do the advertising forecasting for a number of the major newspapers, and what we've seen is that the digital advertising has held up remarkably well. It hardly looks as if there's been a recession if you look at digital advertising, whereas if you look at mainstream hard copy advertising, that has definitely been extremely cyclical. And I think that shows what companies are doing, that they're trying to find new productive ways of addressing their customers without perhaps spending the costs that they had to have previously.